In this episode, we look at the inside-out nature of happiness and how searching for it can be the very thing that makes us overlook where it already exists, within. We explore questions such as, should I feel happy 100% of the time? Why do things that used to make me happy no longer contain any feeling? And how can I be happier? We all want to feel happier, so please join us for the next hour and enjoy the show.
Hi, Gem. How are you?
Hi, Molls. Hi, everybody. I'm doing really well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you, darling. Really nice to be here tonight and to be sharing this subject. Definitely a worthy subject for one of our spaces in our podcasts.
Yeah, definitely. Really, really good title and lots to explore. So just want to say thank you, all of you, for being here with us today. Thank you to Ball Global, who's our sponsor. And any questions, you're always more than welcome to come up and speak. But if you didn't want to speak, just message me and then we can go through them later. But yeah, lots to cover tonight. We've got some really interesting questions so far. I wanted to shout out to Daniel Prince as well. Molls, you were on his podcast, I think it was about 3 weeks ago now. And that episode has just been released on the Once Bitten show. So that's a really, really good episode. And I'll post a link to it. You guys can go and have a listen.
Yeah, that was a great one. It's a bit more about me and my life, but we talk about unminding and obviously it all links back to what we teach here. So yeah, if you're interested, it was a really good podcast. I've had some great feedback from it as well.
It was a really, really nice conversation. Really, really nice. So thank you, everybody, again for being here. It's actually episode 40. I can't believe I forgot to say that. Yeah, so happy 40th, Molls.
Thank you. I feel young.
Oh, no, it's been such a wonderful journey so far. And really thank you for all of you being here. We're really making waves and being heard in all different corners of the world. So the message is definitely spreading and we really couldn't do it without you. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, the podcast is doing great. We're getting, up to 1,000 listeners a week on each episode and growing. I think we're at 94, 95 countries that we listen to now. So you guys, thank you for being part of this. You're with us from the start. We really appreciate you. I would just like to start by saying, just put down what you're carrying that you don't need. Leave all the thinking that has been troubling you, all the problems that you look like you have, just leave them at the door, let them melt away. You don't need them while you're here with us for this hour. This work is also challenging the ego. So you may at some points find you're a bit resistant to the conversation. That's fine too. You may also find yourself saying, how can this work? How can a conversation just change my life? But we can assure you that it can. There's something in seeing the wisdom of what we talk about here that can have transformational effects. And it really is simple. It really is in the conversation. It really is in the deep listening. But because we have such strong intellects, we're so used to exercises and affirmations and mantras that when we tell you that there's nothing to do, that can seem quite odd at first. But remember that what we're here to do is subtract from your mind, not to add. That's why we don't give you any of these things to do. And we're pointing away from the intellect to a deeper truth of who we are. So just let everything fall away. Just see how you feel at the end of the hour. See how you feel for a few days afterwards. And just be here with as little on your mind as possible. And also listen without trying to learn. I know that can seem counterintuitive. But when we're looking within, the most effective way to learn is to listen without the intellect. To listen as if you were listening to the rain falling. This is an inner journey that we're on. So just settle down and just be with us for the next hour. So the title is How to Be Happy. It's a little bit misleading in some ways because it's not so much a how-to. A how-to is what we're used to. A how-to is the thing that the intellect wants. So we're not actually doing a how-to here. We're actually showing you something a little bit deeper than that. I think if you just stick with this, if you're new, please listen to some of our older podcasts, which is the Unminding Project on all platforms. If you've been with us for a while, then you know what we're talking about. But this is an exploration of who we are. And it's in seeing that something is uncovered and happiness is found. it's something quite profound. It's something quite deep. So it's moving away from the material world. It's moving into a space where we already have everything we need within us. I was listening to a great teacher of the principles earlier. His name's Michael Neal. I loved what he said. He was talking about sharing this, and he said, what we don't realize that when we share it, we have a super weapon. And he said, the super weapon that you have when you share this understanding is you are telling the truth. And I loved that. This is the truth. And that's why it's easy for us to be challenged on it, because it comes back to the simplicity and it comes back to the truth. That's why you can ask us any question. The answer is to point within, to come home. The question, how to be happy. I really believe that no matter what someone is doing, they are seeking happiness. They are searching for happiness, whether it's a spiritual practice, whether it's buying things, relationships. There's all different ways that we look for happiness. So many ways that we're misled into thinking that it's outside of ourselves. There's so many ways that we're misled into believing it's something that we can attain by achieving or getting something on the outside. And I looked up on the internet today and I Googled, what is happiness? How do people find happiness and how do you get happiness? And so many different answers came up. But the main things were be in a meaningful relationship, have meaningful work, serve others, keep a positive outlook, feel grateful, connect with others. But to me, they're all symptoms of happiness. They don't give you happiness. Happiness is who you already are. It's so misleading and it's so outside in because the happiness is already within you. I really think that when somebody feels happy and then they think, I'm happy because of this thing outside of me, what they then do is they then use that and they tell everyone else, this is how you get happiness, you do this thing. But that wasn't what gave them the happiness. The happiness was already there. So it's really interesting to go from this outside in perspective of the world supplying your happiness, the world giving you happiness, and all these millions of articles in the world of how to achieve that, to coming back to one thing. You are already happy within. Now that happiness can be obscured, that happiness can be covered, but it's always there. That's the beauty of this understanding. It's seeing through that illusion that is fed to you from the outside world that you will be happy when you have this. I would hazard a guess that 99% of the things that you are told will make you happy will not make you happy because the happiness is already there. What you seek is already who you are. So we're moving away from this world of the media, of materialism, of consumerism. We're moving away from believing that that's where our happiness is and beginning to see it really is an inside job. It really is who we already are before our thinking. It's so beautiful to wake up and begin to see this because suddenly you take the pressure off having to get it from outside of yourself. You don't have to be anyone else. You don't have to be anywhere else. You can be happy exactly as you are right here, right now. And it's not about having better thinking. On these calls, we talk a lot about thought. We talk about thought in the moment is what creates your experience. And sometimes people can get a little bit caught up, especially in the early days of looking towards this understanding of thinking, oh, it's my thinking. Okay, so I need better thinking. And it actually isn't that. It's the fact that you need to see its thought. And I hope you can see the distinction there. It's like better thought is just more thought. We're not saying you need better thinking. We're saying you need to see through the thinking that you have, see through it as an illusion. And I know I've said this on probably nearly every call, but it's so important to repeat. We have 100,000 thoughts a day. We have some that we entertain. We have some that we don't entertain. But we have a lot of thinking. Yeah, so it's not trying to manipulate that thought. It's not trying to change the thinking from positive to negative. That can be really difficult. That can make us feel even worse when we're in a negative mental state and someone says, well, just think positive. You probably don't want to punch them in the face because you think, if I could think positive, I would be thinking positive. So we move away from all of that duality, all of that opposition, all of that fight in our mind. Because underneath that fight in our mind is our happiness. Yeah, so again, it's not having better thinking. Okay, that's really important. It's so easy to get misled into thinking that that's what the answer is. It's seeing the whole nature of thought for what it is. Thought comes, thought goes. With it, feelings come, feelings go. We get to observe that thinking. We get to see that thinking. We get to see that thought is not truth. You do not have to believe your thinking. You can have an experience of something deeper. And that deeper experience is who you are before thought. It's so interesting. This is the How to Be Happy is almost a trick title because it's like, just be. Let yourself off the hook of trying to find happiness. Because if it's who you already are, if what I'm saying is true, then it's really simple. You don't have to manipulate the world to contain your happiness, to provide your happiness. Now, are you going to feel happy all the time? Absolutely not. I don't feel happy all the time. But I'm aware peace and happiness is underneath whatever I'm feeling. And that some thinking's just come along and clouded that. So it can look like it's about having more money, having a better relationship, doing better, having more success. Thought will make up so many different ways for you to obtain happiness. But seeing that it's already there, and then you can play with all those things. Again, it doesn't mean we don't have relationships, we don't desire success, but our happiness isn't messed up in it. Our happiness is innate. We have innate well-being, we have innate happiness, and then we get to go and play in the world. So can you see the difference of being playful in the world, of showing up and just seeing what's happening rather than trying to manipulate the world to provide you with the happiness that you seek? It's not only that we manipulate the world, we try to manipulate other people. If you behave in this way, I'm going to be happy. If you love me, I'm going to be happy. We try to secure our peace of mind and our happiness in other people. It's nothing to do with anyone else. It's always, always present. And I know that can be hard to see. It can be incredibly hard to see if you're stuck in your head, if you've been through trauma, if you feel you're in a bad place. But I guarantee you, if thought cleared, if you had a moment of pure clarity and this deeper wisdom came through, this truth came through, you'll be, oh, of course it's already who I am. Of course it's me. The spiritual teachers throughout the ages weren't lying when they said it was within. It's always been within. It will only ever be within. It's about forgetting, letting go of all the things that you've made up, all the beliefs that you've had around finding happiness outside of yourself, about this elusiveness of happiness, and just seeing that as feelings come and go, one of them will be happiness. You'll also feel sad. You'll sometimes be irritated, but you'll get really comfortable with just feeling and not seeking. Happiness is not conditional. It is innate. You know, we say, I'll be happy when. If there's a future that exists, it's only now. So it doesn't work that way. And the outside world contains so many things, so many wants, and the illusion of their fulfillment. And they're not going to fulfill us. What about the carrot and the stick of the imagined happiness in the future? That can't be possible. There is absolutely no possibility for you to experience happiness other than in the now, other than in this moment. There isn't a future happiness. Can you possibly feel happy in the future? Absolutely. But it can't exist now. Your potential for happiness is right here, right now. That's the truth. And when we begin to explore that, when we begin to explore who we are, when we have these insights and we wake up to our true nature, the illusion of the outside in falls away. We see that our feelings come from us. We free ourselves from the misunderstanding of a world needing to create our feelings. This essential nature, this truth of who we are is revealed. And that's living in the new world. That's living in a world where we are love, we are freedom, and it's not something we have to find. It's here right now. So if you think about what I'm saying here, if there's a resonance, if there's a, okay, yeah, I can kind of see that. That would mean that nothing had to change for you to be okay. But you could go and change everything because you'll have that security of knowing who you are to go and play, to go and change, to go and get what you want, not get what you want, have success, have failure, go live. Because if innate well-being is always there, no matter what is happening in your life, if you didn't have to fix yourself or be anything other than who you are or do anything to be happy, wouldn't that be much easier? Wouldn't that contain so much freedom? Think about the possibility that what I'm saying is true. I mean, I know it's true, but for you, that possibility that you have everything you need right now in this moment. Because the truth is that you do. The truth is that you always have. And the truth is that you always will. And when I said at the beginning of the call about, I don't want you to get this with your intellect, because you don't need to believe it. You need to know it. And that knowing comes from you. That knowing comes from an aha moment. That knowing comes from an insight, a moment of clarity, a moment of, oh shit, my world really is made of thought. I really do have everything within me already. We try to change the world, but we forget the world is the mirror. It's our insides made manifest outside. So this going within does change the world. It does change our world. You know, the collective consciousness raises. We begin to have an ease in life. We begin to have an awareness of the innate beauty of life in the simplest things. The founder of the principles that we teach his name was Sid Banks. He was a simple man. He was a Scottish welder. And he had a huge insight experience, and they formed eventually into these principles. And he said, listen to truth and search for beautiful feelings. That's it. It's that simple. Think how much we complicate that. Think how much we terrorize ourselves with our own thinking. Listen to truth and search for a beautiful feeling. All that searching for a beautiful feeling is listening. These conversations, these podcasts, there's other teachers, there's beautiful spiritual teachers from the past that all point to this. So you just listen with an openness. And as you listen with that openness, you have the potential of that knowing, of that seeing. If you're new to this, just see if you can begin to catch the voice in your head, which is made of thought, which isn't true. Those moments where it starts to judge and it starts to complain. So what is this voice? This isn't who you really are. It's just thought. There's no reality to it. Your judgment, your complaints, your thinking is yours, but it's an illusion. And as you notice that voice, I want you to think about what is noticing that voice. There's an awareness there. There's a deeper sense of being. There's one that sees the voice. There's the witness. So the witness that sees the voice is who you are. So you begin to see through thought. The unhelpful thinking, to a certain degree, melts away. I still have positive and negative thoughts, of course. I don't really take much notice. Occasionally I get caught up, of course. That's because I'm human. But I always see that thought comes and goes. I know that that isn't who I really am. Who I really am is before the thought, is the observer of the thought, is the awareness. That background, that's where we explore, that's where we go. And if you can hear that on this call, and hear that at a deeper level, you'll feel yourself relaxing, you'll feel yourself coming to a space of peace. That's where the happiness comes from. Not from your mind, not from your seeking, not from the world. There. So you can see there's two aspects of this being human. But in this exploration, we have more freedom. We have more freedom from the ego. I think to be human, we have the ego. That's just how I see it. Others can see it differently. But I know that there's so much more freedom when I observe my mind than in the unobserved mind. There's so much more freedom when I see through the illusion of my thinking and who I think I am. And have you seen how you try and think your way into or out of happiness? Because it's not only that we seek happiness and we try and think our way into that, we can be perfectly happy and think our way out of it. We can create future scenarios that take away the happiness. Again, this imagined future, this past that doesn't exist anymore. That's thought taking away the present moment. It's so tricky, but it's so compelling. So this is where we go. This is what we explore. This is where freedom lives, in this exploration. And it's available to every one of us. We can see that our need for certainty, our need for security actually create unhappiness, because they're providing us the illusion of it's outside, but it's inside. If you think about trying to secure the separate self, the identity, the character that we think we are, how can we do that? Because it's constantly changing. We're having new thoughts, new feelings all the time. Life is a cycle of creation and destruction. And we think we can secure that. It doesn't make any sense to me anymore. Of course, my mind sometimes wants certainty, but I know that it's not going to get it. And actually, there's something very exciting in living in that uncertainty when we understand thought, when we understand what it is, when we understand what we're trying to do, when we try to secure this non-existent future, this past that doesn't exist anymore, this security in the world. Security cannot exist in the world. And every time that you apply your well-being and your peace of mind to an illusory security outside of yourself, you're creating insecurity, because ultimately within you, deep within you, you know that it's a lie. You know that it cannot exist outside of you. The very nature of the universe and our experience in it is the exciting uncertainty of not knowing what is waiting for you. But people have become terrified of that uncertainty. Again, another way to take away the happiness, another way to outthink ourselves out of happiness. Look at the stories that the mind creates for you. Look at the ways in which it takes us away from the moment, from the innate happiness that we are. And it's a brilliant system, because when we suffer in our mind, the feeling of suffering comes along with it. So that sensation plus the story is suffering, because we're going into the identity, we're forgetting who we are. Come home. Come before all of that. See through the illusion of that. We can't hold on to anything. It's all so transient. Have you noticed how we have happiness and we try to recreate the situation that we believe created the happiness? It wasn't the situation. You know, my first huge insight into the principles was reading a book by Michael Neal, who I mentioned at the beginning of the show. And I remember reading it again, thinking that I could have this same huge insight. I couldn't even remember the page. And, you know, I read the book. It was still a lovely, great read, but there was no aha moment. There was no awakening. It was just a great read. So that shows us that that experience that I had came from me. It's always coming from us. It's always available. We're always covering it with thought. And that isn't a wrong thing to do. That's just the human condition. But we get to stop seeking happiness when we understand this. And that was a trap I fell in for so much of my life, so many years. And you won't find it. You know, actually seeking is anti-happiness. The very nature of seeking happiness is saying that we're not it. So we're automatically taking it away. It's saying I do not have it, so I must find it. It's such a great trick. But just let the happiness appear when it appears. It's not dependent on a search outside of yourself. And just explore, just see if you can play with what I'm saying. Explore this, inquire a little bit more into this truth. Then you'll begin to see that you are already it. There was never anywhere to go, never anywhere to get to, never happiness to be found outside of yourself. Just this happiness that shines through in the moments that it's meant to shine through. without any resistance, just with an acceptance of life as it is. It's such a wonderful exploration. Does it make life happy all the time? No. Does it stop you having problems? No. Does it make life a richer experience? Absolutely. Do you find out things that you never imagined about yourself and about being human and about life and about all things? Absolutely. So again, it's explore for yourself. Not with seeking. Seeking contains insecurity. Just with, this is interesting. I've heard something here. I might explore a little more and see what this is about. Because for many people, they're fed up of the search outside. I've worked with some very wealthy people and wow, I thought when I got to that arbitrary number that was it. Or when I thought I had that stuff, the happiness would be there. And it wasn't. I was like, no, of course it wasn't. And then that exploration begins for them. And it can begin for everyone. In that moment where you hear something, that moment where that spark of interest, follow that and see where it leads. As I always say, you've got nothing to lose. Why not? And it's a lot cheaper than having to go and buy a Ferrari to find happiness. So, just have fun with it as well. Take the seriousness out and see where you end up. See what you find within you. Gem.
Oh, that was really, really wonderful. And the question that kept going through my head when you were sort of explaining through all of that is, how did we as humans get ourselves into such a wrong situation of seeking? Not wrong, but just kind of semi-blinded. You see it all the time when I'll be happy when I get this, I'll be happy when I get that. And as soon as people get to that point, there's always something else. There's never an end. But we as people, we don't realize it. We don't see it when it's happening. Obviously, we've got the money side of it. Needing things is very lucrative. But how did we as humanity get to the point where everything that we think we need, we are externalizing? I do believe we're in a huge, huge wake up and we are in a new world. But it's so interesting because it's so unlogical when you see it for what it is.
Well, I guess I don't believe anything's ever not meant to be. So I guess humanity was meant to get in this state, if you can call it a state. I mean, it's such a good exploration, but I guess it's just people just living in the misunderstanding. And I think in the West, we're more prone to it than I've travelled a lot in the East. There seems to be less of it, but there's still a lot of it. And it's just the misunderstanding of it's outside. And another thing that, as you ask that I think is that the material world is so tangible. We can feel it, taste it, touch it, see it. It's there. And what we're speaking about is intangible. It's invisible. So maybe it's just really easy to forget and not see it. And maybe we're meant to get lost to get found. So yeah, I don't see that it's wrong. I just see that it is. Everything is as it's supposed to be. But as you say, the amazing thing is how many people are waking up. There's a huge awakening across the world. There's a huge seeing. That's what we do, Gem. We want to wake people up to see this. That's the Unminding Project. That's all of you guys. We say every week we're a team. It's up to you guys to share this as much as us. You never know who's going to hear something and their life will change. And they go from an outside-in experience to an inside-out one. And that's where the riches live. That's where the beauty is.
Yeah, it is pretty incredible. And going back to what you were saying about the expectations as well, because I know I personally used to do that a lot. I was either worried about the past, that the past might repeat itself, or, I had an idea of an imagined future that I wanted. And then if it didn't work out, then I wouldn't be happy. So it was always basing my life on complete fluke. We never know what's going to happen. And so to have expectations and decisions that you think that you already want it to be a certain way, as soon as that doesn't turn up, then it doesn't feel great. So maybe the only expectation that we should have is knowing that whatever happens is supposed to happen, and it just allows you to not have any preconceived ideas and judgments and things, because trying to plan something that's unplannable, it doesn't really make sense. But until we can see it like that, if things were a certain way, that would make me happy. If things weren't, it wouldn't make me happy. But I'm slowly realizing that actually none of these things need to be there, because the happiness has never come from any of these things at all. So it is so interesting. And I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to somebody who felt like they didn't deserve happiness, or happiness wasn't available for them?
Well, happiness is available to everybody. That much I truly believe that. Don't deserve it is really to go on the exploration, because everybody deserves it. You know, it's not even like, even deserving it is a funny word, because it's not even a deserving. You are it. It's who you are before thought. It isn't a deserving happiness. That would be part of the illusion that we create in the world, that, oh, I do deserve this, I don't deserve that. That's all conceptual bullshit that we make up. The truth is that we're already happiness, we're already peace. Our worthiness is a done deal. We don't have to do anything to be worthy. That's the ego game. And so that not deserving of happiness is just as egotistical as the I deserve everything in the world. And look at me, I've got everything, and love me for my material gain. It's all born from insecurity, which is what the ego feeds on. So it's seeing through that, because I guarantee if you touch the space of home, if you touch the space before thought of who you already are, that issue of deserving happiness would just dissolve. It can't exist in the light of consciousness. It can't exist in the truth of who we are. It's just a pure illusion. So it's actually seeing through the thinking. Again, when I said earlier, it's not about having better thinking, it's about seeing it's all thought. I guess that would really apply here, because it's not about having better thinking. It's not from going from the thinking of I don't deserve happiness to I do deserve happiness. It's actually seeing that you are happiness. It's before all of that. And that observer that we really are, that everything that we're looking for exists. But we're also lost trying to find it outside of ourselves. So that the word deserving would just be irrelevant. I've studied non-duality. So within that, anything that has an opposite isn't true. So the fact that we could be deserving and not deserving would automatically mean it wasn't true. It would be a concept created by the experience of the human being alive. Yes, the whole world is dual, good and bad, positive and negative. Truth is none of that. Truth is before that. Truth is one. Truth is love. It has no opposite. It's an isness. It created all of this duality. So this duality is also it, but it's in disguise. Yeah?
Yeah, it's so interesting just to uncover everything. And it's not that you don't get these intrusive thoughts or thoughts that are telling you you're not good enough to do something or you can't do something, but they just become, oh, whatever. You don't believe you're thinking, because it's very easy to believe the good thoughts and then sometimes the bad thoughts or whatever. But to be able to observe everything and know that it doesn't say anything about you is a real gift to be able to see.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ultimate gift is seeing this. It really is. For me, seeing this transformed my life. I know it did for you. I know it has for countless other people. And it's hard to understand that until you see it. But to go from the illusion of needing the world to provide you with good feelings to seeing that you already have all the feelings and the world doesn't have to provide you with anything is freedom. That makes happiness more available, because we're not living in the misunderstanding as much. So happiness is much more available when we see through the beliefs and the conditioning and the illusions that we've created that have told us that it's something that we need to get. It's something that we need to find. We come home. So I said at the beginning of the call, it can seem like, well, how can just having listening to this and maybe inquiring into this and having these conversations change and transform me? Nothing has ever transformed me in the way that this has. Things that I used to do, the exercises, the courses, the therapies, all of that, yeah, it was great at the time, but there wasn't a night and day transformation. This is night and day transformation. This is going from darkness to light in many ways. This is the awakening to who you really are. I don't need to change my world. Why is that? Because I know unhappiness is coming from my thought system in this moment and isn't true. And I know my thinking and my feeling constantly changes. So at some point now my thought will change and the sadness will leave and I will come back to happiness. It's the simplicity of it. It's an amazing thing.
So would you think, or would you say that happiness is just acceptance then?
I think acceptance plays a huge part in it. I think the acceptance allows the happiness to come through. Because if we accept life exactly as it is, there isn't a resistance, so happiness can be there. Now, are we guaranteed to feel it just because we're accepting life? No, but I do think acceptance of life as it is huge. It's such an amazing thing to have, to see that this is life as it is. It can't be any other way. This is my experience. I accept that. It doesn't make us passive. It doesn't mean that we don't try and change things. But there's an acceptance of it as it is. And in the acceptance of it as it is freedom. So I guess in many ways, yeah, there is a happiness in acceptance. Again, does that guarantee I'm going to feel happy just because I accept? No. But you're definitely giving yourself more room to feel happy.
I suppose just being in the moment, whatever's going on, if you have resistance against anything, it's not going to make you feel good.
Yeah, it's just something really interesting that I've observed. And you'll find that if this Spaces was called How to Make More Money, there'd probably be 10,000 people on it. Or like literally we had a guaranteed way for you to make lots of money because we're going within, because we're looking at something deeper. We get a great audience, but it shows me that everybody's looking in the wrong direction. This should be the most listened to Spaces on Twitter or something like this, because this is the truth. This is where it brings us home, and that we find out who we are. We stop that seeking. Now, that doesn't mean to say we don't go and make money. It's fun. But get this first. Find out who you are before all of that. But we can see the illusion because we see how people are caught in it. How many people believe that they're going to listen to a Spaces with a top trader and they're going to hear something that's going to make them their money, that's then going to make them happy. And they think just, oh, it's to get money. Well, why do you want money? You want money because you think it equates to happiness. There's so much misunderstanding in the world and it's so obvious. And it's just, we get to see through that and we get to share that with you guys. And some of you would already have seen through it. And some of you have been helped to see through it by these Spaces or with working with me or with whatever way it is. But this is why it's so important for you guys to share this with other people, whether it's your own experience, whether it's the Spaces, whether it's our podcast, whether it's something else, because we're in a fundamental time where a shift really needs to happen. Humanity really needs to wake up. And as I said earlier, a lot have, but we need more. We're all part of that to help humanity and to help people go beyond the material, to find something more in their experience and in who they are.
Yeah, you're so right. And I think everyone does feel that at the moment. So much is changing in the world, but people are really waking up and finding people that have similar beliefs and values as them. People are really speaking out about their truth. So it's definitely the time for change. We had another great question. And of course, if anyone wants to come up and ask anything, you're more than welcome. And the next one was, why do we know what we should be doing or the best plan of action and still do the opposite despite it harming ourselves?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think because we're human, we believe the thinking that stops us doing the things that maybe we feel that will be beneficial to us. Yeah, it's just that ego. That ego is so compelling. That thinking is so compelling. Again, understanding this gives us a little bit more freedom from that. I still have thoughts of doing things that are going to make life so much better, but sometimes I follow them and sometimes I don't. But are they really going to make life that much better? Because life's pretty amazing in the moment. So we get really caught up in this: what's good, what's bad, what's detrimental, I shouldn't. I'd drop the shoulds and shouldn'ts, number one. I'd start to see that. So if it's a thought like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym all week, then you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm not going to the gym. Start to see through that thinking. Start to see through the illusion of it. Actually, I don't need to believe thought anymore. And since you don't need to believe the unhelpful thinking, so I'm just going to go and do what I said I was going to do. This understanding frees us a little bit from that. But thought's always going to be compelling at times, and we're always going to not go to the gym. It's just the nature of being a human being. This ego that we have, this thought system that we have, is constantly running our lives. Every experience that we have comes from thought. So, we're going to believe it. We're going to get caught up in it. We're going to get freedom from it. We're going to have all of the feelings. We're going to have all of the thoughts. Again, just be less harsh on yourself. I think we can beat ourselves up over things like that and just begin to see through the thinking that you believe is holding you back and see that it's more thought that isn't true.
Yeah, definitely. And we're so good as humans as telling stories. We believe that certain things are for us and certain things are not. So being able to strip all of that away allows you to open up to so many new experiences and things that you might have missed before, because the worthiness, it never comes from the outside, it's always from the inside. And changing your expectations to just expect that whatever happens is going to be okay. It's lovely to have goals, but if they don't happen, it's not the end of the world, because it's just like, oh, okay, well, there's something else for me then. So just relaxing into life, I suppose.
Yeah, being in the moment. I think presence is the next podcast that we release. And when it's out, listen to that. There's so much to find in exploring presence, in listening to who you really are, in being in the moment. So, yeah, I love that, Gem.
Yeah, and Presence is a beautiful, beautiful episode. It should be out either tomorrow or the next day. It was a very emotional episode, but a fantastic one. I mean, I've had a few things this week where I've thought something about a situation and I've realised that's complete bullshit, and I've had to drag myself out of it. We've been doing quite a lot of stuff with Unminding, and we've been messaging a lot because we've got lots of different things that we need to figure out. And yesterday or the day before, you were quite busy with clients and I'd sent you quite a few messages. And in my head, I was like, oh God, stop messaging her. You're going to really annoy her. And then I got in my head, I was like, well, she doesn't even like you, Gem. Bloody hell. And as soon as I started thinking that, this is just your mind getting carried away with you. And we laughed about it. It's so crazy how your mind can think something that's completely irrational, but depending on how you feel, you might hold on to it and think, oh, it might be true. If I'd have had that thought at any other time, I would have laughed and I've said, well, of course she likes me. But it's really interesting to catch yourself and realize that most of the things that we think are probably not that helpful.
Yeah, and it was funny when you phoned me and you went, oh, I've really been in my head and I've been thinking that you don't like me. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't. And we were just laughing.
It was very, very funny because there's nothing. It's a real relief, because every single time I get caught up, it's just me. There's nothing I can blame it on. There's no outside influence. It's me. So having that self-responsibility, if things aren't great, it's probably down to you. And that gives you that ability to make life how you really want it and to see it how you want it.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's an amazing thing that's just come to me is that because you understand what we're sharing here, obviously, but instead of getting too into it, obviously you had the thought and you're like, oh, maybe that's true. And then as soon as we spoke and we laughed about it, it was gone. It disappeared. There was nothing to look at. It wasn't true. Now, in the old way that we used to be, certainly the way I used to be, I would have then had to analyse well, why did I think like that? Where is that insecurity coming from? Is that my childhood? Do I think she doesn't like me because of what happened when I was 12? And maybe I need to cure that thinking. But with this, we just see, oh, it's thought. And as we see its thought, it just disappears and it's funny. And I love that about this. There's so much freedom and we don't have to analyze. The analysis of our own thinking is just a good hiding to nothing because thought's always going to create more stories. So actually, that's so beautiful what you just said because it really points to the freedom of seeing this and seeing through our own thinking.
It is funny because, I wouldn't have had to speak to you to know that you did like me. I just needed to get out of my own head. It's so, I do sound like a crazy person sometimes on these, but it is very funny. And we've got a request. I'm going to say Josh.
Oh.
I'll just bring you up now, Josh. That's been another very quick hour. It
Yeah, they
just
go so
flies.
quickly.
Definitely feels like the unmindings just fly past now.
Yeah, they really do. Oh, yeah, he's there. Brilliant.
Hi, Josh. How are you today?
Hi, Josh. Did we say that right? Josh?
It's Josh. Just drop the WR, Josh. It's real.
Okay.
Can make it easy for y'all.
Thank you so much, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. That's, my gosh. I've had so many epiphanies today, and it's remarkable how many of the same thoughts that I have, you were repeating, and I don't know, you make sense to my brain in such a way that I'm actually able to, suppress. I don't know. You are amazing. Good delivery of the message. I do have one question though, in regards to quieting down the ego, synchronicity. When synchronicity happens, how does that tie into the equation? Because I've had too many experiences that I cannot dismiss as anything other than synchronicity. Saying the ego, and I guess how does synchronicity and the ego and intuition, how does intuition tie into, I guess, what all that you spoke on today?
I would say that intuition is, and thank you for your question, I would say intuition is exactly what we're pointing to. Because as we come out of the personal thinking, the monkey mind as it's called, and we sit in that space of knowing, intuition is just natural. Synchronicity is natural. We take ourselves away from that with our own thought system. Who we are is wisdom. That wisdom gets covered, gets distorted by a lot of bullshit that we think. So again, this understanding allows us to see through that thinking because suddenly thought appears, we see it's not true, and we come back home to wisdom. So when I'm talking about peace of mind, innate well-being, happiness, that's the wisdom that I'm pointing to. It's got many different names. And for me, we take ourselves away from it with our thought system, with beliefs. And it's in challenging those beliefs and that thought system that brings us home to it. So that's exactly what we're pointing to. It's the same thing. So does that answer your question?
1,000%, yes. I love the way your mind works and how you are able to deliver this insight, because it's just, yeah. Thank you so much. That definitely answered my question. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Josh. Thank you for coming up. And I've seen you lately on the spaces, and we really appreciate you being here. And, stick with it. If you're hearing something, stick with it because there's just so much more to see. I mean, I'm 10 years in and I still get insights. And I'm like, oh my God, how did I not see that? Again, there's such richness to be found inside of ourselves. It's all within. And this exploration, as time goes on, you'll be like, wow. Oh, even more. Yeah. And for all of us that are going in this direction, that are on this journey together, if we can all hold each other's hands and explore, it becomes even richer because we've got a community that are looking in this direction. And hopefully at some point, a world that's looking in this direction. So thank you for being part of it.
Thank you,
Thank
Josh.
Thank you for helping make it happen. It's people like you that are going to make the world a better place. So thank you, truly. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Josh.
You can hear the excitement in your voice as well. So it's a lovely journey to be on. Thank you.
I'm very passionate about mental health, mental wellness, and helping people. And that, what last thing I'll say, because that a lot of quotes have been popping up in my mind, but he who looks out, or they who look outside dream, they who look inside awaken.
Oh, I love that quote. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you for sharing the wisdom.
Thank you. And please share these spaces. Please share our podcast, the Unminding Project, with anyone that will listen. You're part of our team, so thank you. I have a lovely quote. It's from Eckhart Tolle. He's one of my favourite teachers. And it's, people believe themselves to be dependent on what happens for their happiness. They don't realise that what happens is the most unstable thing in the universe. It changes constantly. They look upon the present moment as either marred by something that has happened and shouldn't have, or as deficient because of something that has not happened but should have. And so they miss the deeper perfection that is inherent in life itself. A perfection that lies beyond what is happening or not happening. Accept the present moment and find the perfection that is untouched by time.
That's very beautiful and closes off everything very nicely. So just want to say thank you for joining us today. If you're on Fountain, give us a boost, and thank you for being part of the Unminding revolution. We're sponsored by Bull Global. You can check them out at bullcoin.io. So thank you to them. And we look very much forward to seeing you all next week.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being a part of our journey as well. You know, what we want to create in the world. Couldn't do it without you all. So we love you very much and thank you.